Amy Tesch Strickland, welcome back to the Creative Ops Podcast.
Thank you, Nish. It is great to be here under these auspicious circumstances.
Yes, I'm very excited about this. So this was sort of a last minute thing. So thank you for fitting me into your schedule. And I'm not going to ask you the question we always start off with, which is what's your definition of creative operations? Because you've answered that on a previous episode that folks should go and check if they haven't listened to it before. But today's conversation was really prompted by you and a couple of other stalwarts in the creative operations space / marketing operations, which is something I want to talk about. You folks have pulled together the Advanced Creative Operations Silver Certificate program that's going to be delivered through Rutgers. So I wanted to take some time today just to learn more about it. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners will be interested in learning more about it. So first of all, just tell us, what is this program? Give us the highlights. What is this program and how did it come together and who's behind this?
Yeah. So at a high level, Rutgers has a somewhat long running professional certification program, including one under David Lipsey in digital asset management, which is a very robust program with a number of tracks. And this is sort of a new baby cousin to those programs that already exist at Rutgers. This Creative Ops program is a 12-week arc of 3 4-week modules. And in each of those module, we focus on something particular, and it's taught by one of the 3 instructors in the program. One is the program developer, which is Clair Carter-Ginn. The other is myself, Amy Strickland. And the third is Dill, who is the director of, I believe, marketing ops with one of the Stanford organizations, is our third professor. The first module really is foundational and introduces the concepts of people, process, tools, and data, goes through org assessment, how to establish processes within your organization and workflows, goes through a SWOT analysis, and goes through definition of creative ops, just to level set for the rest of the course. In the second module, everything is a follow-on from that. There is a maturity assessment of your org's maturity. Based on that, then there's a future state vision for where you want to go. There is an actual phased roadmap building to really articulate the steps to get there, attach metrics and KPIs to that, and then stakeholder mapping, who cares about what parts of that. And then the third module is focused on change, innovation, and change management and risk management. So we'll go through diversity and how diversity interplays with inspiration and innovation, and the importance and strategies for communication across your org to really hammer home all of the things that you've learned in the course and share them in the org. So that's a slightly more detailed version that you'll see in the marketing materials, but those all have activities, reading, lectures, and assignment associated with them.
Okay. And just so I know and the listeners know, what is the cost of this 12-week program? Because anyone that's interested is going to go and ask for somebody to permission to expense this.
Yeah, that's a good question. It is $3,285 for the 12-week program in total.
Okay. And you get a certificate from Rutgers at the end of this.
There is an actual professional certification that comes with it through Rutgers. And that is both a thing to hang on the wall, and also I believe it's a badge related to LinkedIn certification, so that you can show on your profile that you legitimately have the certification.
So I absolutely love the fact that you guys are doing this. And I say that for the audience I haven't gone through the course. So, and you've shared with me offline, this is the first time you folks are doing it. And you will, of course, continue to iterate on this as you go through the first one, then the next one, so on and so forth. But I love this for a lot of reasons. First of all, Amy, we've talked a lot in this podcast about my belief that creative operations is in its teenage years. And it feels like it's stuck in its teenage years, and it needs to mature into adulthood and really define what it is and the value it gives to the business. So that a lot of the items you're talking about, especially in that second module, like talking about like maturity and road mapping and things like that. Those are the marks of like a job in a profession that is ready to step into adulthood. I love the fact there's a certificate, and I know some people might be rolling their eyes as they're listening to this, but the certificate matters because inside of organizations, being able to like wave that like physical or digital certificate gives additional credibility to the role of creative operations. It's amazed me that every other operations roles, there's like LinkedIn courses and certificates, other professional development courses.
PMP is a great one in our field
Exactly.
as well. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think like for $3,285, now I'm going to start sounding like an infomercial. I think it's a great investment in learning, in networking. And I know we're going to talk about that because it seems like it's a big part of what you and Claire and Corey have designed, but also the credibility that it brings internally to go, this is a real thing. Because a lot of what I've seen happen in the creative operations space over the last couple of years is that organizations, in a lot of cases, have eliminated the role. And while I don't know for a fact, I can almost imagine the thought process they go through is, well, we have project management systems in place and processes. Why do we still need a creative operations role? And you and I know creative operations is so much more than that. You and Claire and Corey have lived that, and you've made creative operations strategic and valuable functions wherever you've been, either in-house or as consultants.
Yeah, and I think that the piece that's missing and that's getting us stuck in these teenage years, right? I think we're not doing a good enough job of communicating and providing proof points that the profession is more than just project management. And I think that's one of the things we're hoping to make very clear and actionable through this program and the takeaways from this program. I mean, this is not just theoretical. These are, the learners in this program will be using their real world examples. And if they're not currently in a job, they can use historical knowledge. But these tools are designed to be created using real information from folks' jobs so that they can go in and actually have discussions about the strategic roadmap and the vision and do real stakeholder mapping and alignment exercises. It's really designed to be for sort of the sweet spot of experience that we've targeted for this cohort is 3 years of a specific creative ops role. So that at that point, the thinking is you really have the tactics down, right? You understand how all of the pieces fit together between people, process, tool, and data, the terminology. You've been through a couple of cycles in those 3 years of probably hiring, probably re-examining your tech stack, et cetera. But then what, right? I think the then what is what's missing. And to your point, that's when maybe some leaders now are saying, if there is no then what, then why are you still here, right?
Yeah.
And so this program is designed to hopefully be part of the solution for then what, to really be able to show senior leaders that we have a strategic approach and that we have specific things that we can add to the discussion to get a seat at that table where decisions are being made.
Yeah, I think that's very insightful. And I love the fact that it's you, Claire, and Corey. So for those of you that don't know, like Amy, you've been in the creative operations world for years. Like you and I go back 10 years, is it?
Yeah.
You've been
least.
at like Sam's Club, and you've been at Sella on the consulting side, worked with companies of all different shapes and sizes. And you've also bled into like marketing operations, which I know in the course you touch on. And Corey has done, I think Corey I only met recently, but have had like 2 great conversations with him this past year. And he's like, he's one of the smartest guys that's like really merged creative and marketing operations. That's partially a function of like the Stanford organization that he's at, but really smart thinker. And it shows up in the way that they operate over there. And then Claire Carter-Ginn, of course, is the Kevin Bacon of creative operations. If we're to play 6 degrees of creative operations, it's going to be 6 degrees of Claire Carter-Ginn. Like she has been here, there, and everywhere. And she is just an amazing individual that is not only hella smart, but always goes out of her way to connect people that need to be connected. So just for that, like going to the course and getting connected to the three of you and then to Claire and being able to play 6 degrees of creative operations, I think is, again, worth it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other things that I personally think is really valuable about this program is actually the networking aspect. So the learners in this program, it will be a small enough group that they will get to know each other because they will be interacting on discussion boards, and they're all going to be at approximately the same level in their career. There are no geographic requirements. It's largely online and asynchronous. So people will get exposed to other folks in the industry, and they'll get exposed to your point, Claire, Corey, and me. And that network is, man, it's so important. I mean, if not for that, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you about this program today, right? It's important to me that people prioritize their networks because that's where you get opportunities to learn from each other and to share the knowledge that you have. And that helps us, again, as a profession, continue to level up.
Yeah, so let's talk a bit about the format of this. Is this like, if I were to sign up for this, am I going to be watching videos, going to live classes where there's more of a dynamic discussion? Am I going to get homework? And are you going to grade that homework? Or is it going to be more like peer discussions and like sharing and collaboration and getting feedback from others?
Yeah, first of all, because it is a legitimate credential, yes, there is homework and yes, it is graded, right? Okay. This is not a $3,285 gimme. There is genuine effort involved on the part of the learners to get what they need to get out of the course. The format is, there are no live classes. There are video lectures. There are assigned readings for each week. So each week has a theme. So each week theme has a lecture, has assigned readings, has a group discussion, which is on a chat board on the learning platform, and then an assignment. And there is a time limit, not a time limit, but a general time commitment that is built with a full-time working family person in mind. So it is a reasonable load. And quite honestly, I don't remember the number of hours we targeted, but we all thought if I had a full-time job and probably a couple of kids and a volleyball league, I could still do this and not feel overwhelmed.
Okay. No, that's good.
And then I believe that each week, each instructor, so that the instructors take turns. So only one of us sort of does each module, and then later on we'll flip-flop. But I believe there is an optional office hours by the teaching professor of that module each week, so that if people want to come and ask questions or have any discussions, that we are available for that.
Oh, that's awesome. That also is like huge value, because I'm sure people are going to, of course, be relating this back to whatever they're dealing with in their current day to day. So let's talk about, who do you think should be attending this? Like, as I'm a big fat creative operations nerd, but I'm not working in a creative operations role necessarily. So is this for somebody that's been in a creative operations role for a while now, somebody that's maybe a project manager today, or was a project manager yesterday but changed their title to creative operations this morning, which I've got a bit of a pet peeve around, but they're looking for that way forward into earning and being able to be credibly say, I'm a creative operations professional. So who's this for?
Yeah. So the target that we had in mind as we were developing the curriculum was someone who had 3 years of experience, specifically with a creative ops title. Now, as you said, you and I both know that the creative ops title can mean 100 things at 100 different places, but that's sort of the best we could nail down the jelly there. I would say if someone had only been a project manager and has never actually touched any of what you and I would call sort of the real meat of creative operation, this might be a bigger challenge for them. We do have the first module, which introduces and aligns on the definition of creative ops and introduces the pillars, people, process, tools, and data, tech and data. But if all you've been doing is, and I don't mean to minimize project management, but if you've not touched any of those other areas, some of the concepts might be a bridge too far for you, which is why we stuck with creative ops title and some experience with that. There is a team at Rutgers that vets applicants gently, I would say, but to make sure that it is the right level of learning for the person with that experience. So I believe they will even go back and have a discussion with folks to get a better understanding of what they know if it's not clear from the application.
Well, that's a really good point, because I think it reinforces what you said earlier. This is not a gimme, pay your money and get a certificate.
That's
like
right.
there's a vetting process.
Yeah.
And no, I think that's really good. But I would still say, like, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say the other audience that I think, even though it wasn't outright as we were thinking about it during the curriculum, when I look at the package all in, I think it's also very appropriate for folks who might be sitting in slightly more senior and creative ops roles that have not had mentoring or coaching or leadership that has been able to bring them up to that strategic level, right? So my observation is that many creative ops senior leaders are sort of self-made or self-taught, right? They're reporting either to a creative or sometimes to a VP marketing or a CMO. And those people are not in the weeds enough to understand the job, right? The tactics. And so it's hard for those leaders to coach an ops professional generally, because they don't know the content of the job itself. So I think there might be some more senior leaders out there who really have the chops for those tactical things and are reaching for those strategic things, but they feel too abstract. And this curriculum attaches a more real world creative ops language and situation to those strategic things that might otherwise feel abstract. If that makes sense.
I think that is such a valuable point, especially for any senior leaders that are listening, because you're right. I mean, there hasn't been a creative operations school. Most people just sort of, I'm always fascinated by how people even got into the role of creative operations. And if I've spoken to 500 people about their creative operations story, there's 500 different stories and pathways to it. And for those folks that have been able to get to those senior positions, and again, I've seen this over the last couple of years, I think the wall they end up hitting, and sometimes it results in a pretty severe change for them, is that strategic one. Like, how do I sort of start to think about creative operations, not through the lens of doing, but through the lens of the business and strategy and these different frameworks of how to think about it and how to then translate it into what might matter to the executives, to IT, to marketing leadership and folks like that. So it's almost like I spent the last 30 years starting and building businesses, but I guaranteed, and I've been pretty successful at it, but guaranteed if I went to a 12-week certificate course at insert business school name here, I'm going to learn a whole bunch of things that I never knew, and I'm going to be better armed at talking to people that live in that world. So I think that'll be hugely valuable.
And I think the other thing that sort of can be lost on ops leaders, and by the time you realize you haven't done it, it's too late, is really thinking through stakeholders, stakeholder buy-in, stakeholder mapping, how to get alignment, who to get it from, when to get it, what they care about. By the time you've been turned down for a proposal of something or a tool that you talk to IT about, it's probably too late to learn those things, at least for that time around. So this introduces at least these concepts and it puts folks in a position to at least think about them when they're making request proposals inside the org.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it'll be fascinating to sort of for you folks to follow some of the students afterwards, and how do their conversations change with their creative directors with marketing leadership and other sort of more senior stakeholders in the organization. Because I think that'll be really where the value, the proof in the pudding will be, is there, I believe.
We should have a metric about how many testimonials we can get out of each cohort.
Exactly. Or maybe the metric will be how many VPs of creative operations start to show up on LinkedIn, right? Because they make a case for like, hey, this is really valuable and here's why it matters. And the other thing that piqued my curiosity is that there was a mention about marketing operations, if I'm not mistaken, in the curriculum breakdown. So are you and Corey and Claire sort of talking about creative ops and marketing ops, sort of like, and what that means to get? You and I had a discussion on an earlier episode, and we set off a bit of a firestorm around, does creative operations belong in marketing operations? Or you set the firestorm off, and I got all the direct messages about that. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, so this, I would say it acknowledges that there sometimes is a relationship between those functions, but the curriculum overall is very specifically focused on creative operations. So just to make sure that the learning could be at its most pure, we didn't delve extremely deeply into marketing ops, except in some areas where we do talk about tech relationship and where you can get leverage and how you can use the marketing op as a strategic ally, right? And they are probably a stakeholder. So we do touch on those things, but to be clear, the curriculum is very focused on creative ops in specific.
All right, cool. So just as we're wrapping up, anything that you want to make sure the listener understands before we sort of wrap up with, like, you know, when and where and things like that?
Yeah, I guess I would say if anyone isn't clear whether this program is right for them, I would encourage them to reach out to me or reach out to Claire or reach out to Corey and ask all of your questions. We're all just new at this too. This is the first time this is happening. You won't be able to talk to anyone yet who's been through the course, but any of the three of us would be happy to be very honest with you, share the syllabus if we need to, and really talk through with you, either if you're the interested party or if you're the leader who has questions about whether it's the right program to send someone on your team and want to have a confidential discussion about that person's level. We're happy to do those, and we would actually really appreciate it because we also want to know who is out there and who's interested in this kind of content.
Excellent. So I'll make sure in the show notes we have a link to the Rutgers site that talks more about the course and how to apply. And the course does start the last week of September. So if you're listening to this and interested, like, even if you're not sure you want to do this, just apply. Because as you said, there's a vetting process. So just apply and at least get the ball moving, even as you might have to go and ask for permission to expense this. And if you need a case for like permission to expense this, reach out to, as you said, Amy, Corey, Claire. I'll put links to their LinkedIn profiles in the show notes as well. And then again, for me, I can't like endorse the course because I don't, as you said, first time you're doing it, I've got no exposure to it. But I know you, I know Claire, I know Corey, you are three stellar individuals in the creative operations space. So I have 100% confidence that you three have put a lot of effort into shaping and molding this. You're three of the smartest thinkers in creative operations. So I think like, and again, it's like, it's a touch over $3,000. Like that's $10 a day. That's like what, one Starbucks dessert and a cup drink in the morning with with sprinkles on it.
Over 12 weeks. Yeah, that's actually quite a bargain. I also want to make sure to give a shout out to all the folks at Rutgers who were involved in helping us create this. Claire, Corey, and I are creative ops professionals. We are absolutely not curriculum developers. So we had a tremendous amount of lift and help from the team over there, David and Julia and Sheila. And we certainly couldn't have done it, and it wouldn't have been as good without the deep knowledge that they have about doing this stuff. So they're the real deal in terms of creating professional education programs. So it was amazing to work with them.
Well, that's a great note to end on. And thank you from me and anyone else out there listening who agrees we need to transition creative operations from its teenage years into adulthood. And I think what you, Corey, and Claire, and the folks at Rutgers are doing, this is a key step in that. So check it out, folks. Link will be in the show notes, and you'll have contact information for Amy and the others if you have questions. Amy, thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Always good to talk to you, Nish.